Welcome to Business Decoded with Ronnie Spellman. We crack the code so you don't have to.
Welcome to the Business Decoded podcast with Ronnie Spellman. I have an incredible guest that has an amazing experience. I think you'll really enjoy this because it's something that often is missing when we talk about how people interact in the professional workplace and at events and at settings and even lunches. I attended an event once where they were teaching young people how to engage in a professional setting over lunch, what to eat and how to eat. So we have with us Alison Cheperdak. Alison, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're the founder of Elevate Etiquette.
Yes.
So how did you create the company? What does the company provide and do?
It's a modern etiquette consultancy where I help people with modern manners for life, work, and love. And I also share international protocol. I work with individuals and organizations that are, whether they're trying to perfect their executive presence or be more comfortable in dining etiquette or career development or social graces. Those are all services that I help people with.
So, Alison, you've been everywhere. It's been fun watching you on television, but you've been in Vogue, you've been in Fox News, The Washington Post, Southern Living, New York Post, Daily Mail. You're everywhere. How did you find that there was a need for this type of work and assistance for professionals and leaders?
Started getting interested in etiquette for my own personal growth, trying to answer questions that I had back almost 15 years ago now when my husband and I were engaged to be married, and I had all these wedding etiquette questions that I didn't know the answer to. And at the time, I was working in TV news as a reporter and an anchor. And I thought that I would get this first etiquette book that my mom recommended during the wedding planning process to just turn into pages that would tell me, like, does every cousin get a +1? Or how do I address this envelope to a military couple and those kinds of things. And then I found myself reading that book cover to cover, and I continued to read and learn about etiquette and protocol as I was working in TV news. And then I went to law school and I'm practicing law. And when I went to law school and I was practicing law in Washington, D.C., I was finding, and perhaps you can relate having worked in D.C. yourself, it's such a relationship-oriented town. And they're not from here. And soft skills and emotional intelligence really matter. And so I was seeing that there were peers of mine that were really ambitious, but maybe didn't know how to advocate for themselves in an effective way. And there were all these little soft skills, or I would see people that grew up in the Midwest in a wonderful, kind environment, but one where formal dining wasn't practiced. And then all of a sudden they're dining with members of Congress and lobbyists and congressional staff. And they're wondering what fork do they use and how do they pronounce the thing. And so I saw a real need in Washington, and they didn't quite know how to advocate for themselves in a very effective way. And so I had an opportunity where I had worked for someone that wasn't reelected, and I chose to get a certification in British and North American etiquette, not necessarily intending to teach it, but just thinking it was great for my own personal development. And then while I was doing that certification program, I was surrounded by other people with thriving businesses in etiquette and protocol. So I saw that as like proof of concept that there's an audience here. And I started posting on social media first, and things took off pretty quickly to a point where I was then getting speaking engagements and all this, teaching at Harvard Law School and the U.S. Congress and the White House, and I got a book deal. So
you skipped through a lot of things there, but I want to come back to teaching etiquette at the White House and Congress and those other places, which is just incredible. I attended an event with a group of high school students, and I think I underestimated how important and how useful it is to teach other people exactly what you're doing at all levels, whether they're high school, college, or even beyond. But I watched these students trying to figure out which drink was theirs, which bread plate was there, which knife and fork to use. And I even watched as one student struggled to figure out which side of the knife to use. It was fascinating as they were cutting. And then they thought the salad that was already on the table was the entire meal. They didn't realize there were several courses to that meal. And so I think for some, it might seem like, why do we need a course on etiquette? But you're absolutely right. I tell you another quick one. I was attending a different event at a college program, and they were teaching a group of about 100 students the proper etiquette. And they were telling them that spaghetti noodles, something that you might not want to have at a professional lunch. Yes. And then they served spaghetti at that specific event, which was intriguing because they were trying to show them, again, the entire setup. And then they did something that was crossed out on the list of things to do. But what do you find are some of the common mistakes that people tend to have as they prepare for that environment and culture that requires them to understand some basic level etiquette?
I think one of the mistakes is not preparing. So if you are doing any kind of job like sales or any sort of interview that involves a meal, you want to have a basic understanding of dining etiquette so that those things don't trip you up. It's just like if you're going to a job interview, you don't want that to be the first day that you wear a new suit or it's the first time that you wear a suit. You want to be wearing something that makes you feel like yourself, that makes you feel confident, that doesn't make you feel like you're wearing a costume or pretending to be somebody else. Sure. And we don't teach etiquette or learn dining etiquette so that we can show off that we know what an oyster fork looks like or some of these more obscure things. It's so that it's like for athletes, like it's muscle memory. So you're not thinking about it so that you can.
So you mentioned muscle memory, which is fascinating. Were you an athlete as well?
I was, yes, a figure skater.
Okay, that makes sense then, total sense. My daughter was a gymnast, and that muscle memory component is very much similar as in skating, as you mentioned. And that kind of habit and practice makes perfect, as they always say, but it gets you, like you said, comfortable in that environment. So you can really focus on making that sell or making that engagement versus how you look and how you feel and which fork to pick up, right? Mm-hmm. So your background is impeccable. You went to undergrad where?
At Villanova.
And then you went to law school.
Yes, at GW or George Washington.
And then how did you end up being a reporter? Was that in your plan for a long time, being in the television studio?
Yes. And so I was working in TV news prior to going to law school. And I've always loved reading, writing, storytelling, history, current events. I grew up in a family where my parents and my grandparents were always reading the newspaper and the news was always on. So just very aware of global affairs. And I think that's why I was positioned to be so interested in political and legal stories most. And so I got my first job I studied political science and journalism in college. Okay. First job as a TV news reporter at an NBC station in upstate New York. And I'm covering a little bit of everything and really found myself most attracted to legal and political stories. So that's why I wanted to go to law school, and I wanted to go to law school in Washington, and it gratefully did work out.
Right.
And I got to law school and I just realized there's so many things you can do with a law degree that I hadn't thought of before.
And isn't that amazing, though, to have that kind of epiphany where you think, wow, there's a world out there that I don't know well. There's so much that I can do and so many places I can go and learn about, especially being a history person as you are. But just reaching that epiphany is absolutely amazing when you talk about your career journey and the access to opportunities. And so how was it being a reporter? I've always thought that it just seems like a great profession to be. And again, covering various different stories. And you were in a major media market in New York. So I suspect there was something always that kept you engaged and entertained to some degree.
Yes, I loved it. And I think I know there are so many skills that you acquire in journalism that are transferable to other aspects of life. Like, for example, just having conversations, building relationships, being kind to people, being trustworthy. Like, if you don't honor someone's confidence and you share something that was supposed to be on background on the news, they're not going to work with you again. So not that anyone would ever do that, but also working on difficult deadlines on a regular basis.
And that is very true. Yes.
Yeah, it's a good skill to have. Right. And I learned as a news reporter or just going to law school after being a news reporter, that I work well with many shorter deadlines versus longer deadlines.
And what's fascinating is most people don't really understand that industry. I've spent some time in the studio, and the deadlines are real. Like in some other businesses, if you miss a date, then maybe there's some flexibility. You can recover, you can extend it. In the reporting world, there is no extending. The deadline is the deadline. You have to get on the air or in the newspaper or in the magazine, right?
Absolutely. I think it's a good career for people who are perfectionists because it will shake the perfectionism out of you because ready or not, the 6 o'clock news is coming and you just need to provide the best that you can.
Right. One thing that I speak a lot about is how you pivot. So if something doesn't go perfect in the business, how do you transition and pivot? If you're live on a broadcast, have you ever had a moment where you just need to figure out how to make a transition? Something happens that's completely unpredicted and you have to make a transition. I'm sure you've had those moments.
Oh, absolutely. That's what live television is all about because it's not scripted. Well, you do have your moments if you're anchoring and you're at the desk and you're reading the teleprompter, but in general, there are lots of moments where you are having conversations. You can't anticipate what people are going to say. Like you just know the topic. And that's mostly what I do now, really all of what I do now on live television. I have a general idea of the topic, but beyond that, it's a conversation, just like the conversation you and I are having now.
Right. Now, I attended an event and I've been talking about you a lot. I've been sharing your information and talking about your book and your website. There's a lady, Colleen Reckenbacher, who is an etiquette person as well. So I showed her your website and I texted it to her. I think she is certified also, and she works with the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders and some others doing similar. She's incredible. And so she was very fascinated by yours. But tell our listener again, how you make that transition. You found the certification program. How did you even find a program that will certify you and give you the experience that you needed?
Well, it's a topic that I'm really interested in. So if there was a program out there, I was going to find it. They have a collection of etiquette books and I'm pretty well read and aware of what's out there in different countries. So that was how I found it. And I was super happy. So the program I did was through Beaumont Etiquette, which is based in New York City, and then the English Manor, which is based in London. Nice. And they have a lot of international students and they have guest speakers that come in from the UN. And I was really impressed. And they have a nice global alumni network that's really supportive. And then while I was going through it, I met other people with great businesses in etiquette and protocol. So that's what gave me the confidence to start posting and sharing online. I saw their success as like proof of concept. And the program I did was through Beaumont Etiquette, which is based in New York City, and then the English Manor, which is based in London.
Now, did you know this would turn into a business for you? So you transitioned from having this as a form of your preparation for a wedding, and then you take the certification and the classes, and then you start blogging. When did you think it could become a real business for you?
Podcasts are so popular, even monkeys are doing it.
75% of Americans listen to podcasts monthly. That's 210 million people in the United States alone. And yes, podcasts are profitable. Joe Rogan is making $30 million per year. Your content, your knowledge is worth sharing. Don't just dream it, do it. Visit andycostafilms.com/podcast and turn your content into leads.
Well, at the point when I was posting online, that's when I thought it was going to be a business. Right. But before that, it was just a personal passion. I saw it as like a personal growth or professional development type of thing that I was doing. And I also, living in Washington, people change jobs frequently with elections. And I was at an inflection point where I was really thinking like, what are my gifts? What are my talents? And how am I called to use them? And I was also thinking about questions like, what is something that I would do even if people weren't paying me to do it? And then what is something that people are always asking me about or asking me for? And for me, it was a lot of like, can you help me with my resume or help me write this thank you note? Or what do I wear to this wedding? Or how do I set a table? Or like hospitality related things. So it was a natural fit. And I was very much supported by the momentum that I received online pretty quickly, and then getting more and more speaking opportunities soon thereafter.
You know what's fascinating though about what you just said is I speak to a lot of business people, and that's almost the reason why we created the podcast, because I talk to people that they're great people. They probably have a good business idea, but they don't necessarily think it's a commercial idea. And I tell them, if you build that personal passion, like you just described, then that could translate into a business, but they're a little reluctant because they think that they're the only ones that need what they've become really good at. Right? Mm-hmm. So they don't take it out to others. And fortunately, your blog kind of tested the waters for you and let you know that your personal passion is actually a potential business opportunity.
Yes.
Yeah, which is just incredible. And then that inflection point is unique in what you mentioned. I think a lot of people often reach that road where maybe they're laid off from a great job, but they still don't think they can build a business. They don't necessarily understand their value or what their capabilities are and the value it is to other people. And both of those merged for you. You had that personal passion, that inflection point, and then you realized that there was a potential business opportunity there.
Yes.
Now, what kind of support did you need in order to reach the next level in starting the business? I presume you didn't go out to investors like many companies might, especially if they're in software technology. You just sort of slowly ramped up, and then you started getting the feedback that in the invitations, it sounds like.
My husband's an entrepreneur and my dad's an entrepreneur. So I had seen that model, and that was very helpful. And I also was financially in a place where, I had been practicing law for some time and I had the flexibility to start something from the very beginning.
Right.
And so that was helpful. And then I really benefited from my contacts, having worked in government before and having a lot of friends and former colleagues working in various places that were interested in my services.
Right.
So that was helpful.
So, Alison, I have to ask you this. You're absolutely brilliant with a remarkable background. So you went from the newsroom to law. What type of law did you practice?
I was in commercial litigation.
Oh, wow. Okay. Any unique cases that stand out from you without mentioning anything where you have an NDA?
Well, I got to work on some defamation cases that were really interesting because I have a background in TV news and journalism. And so those were some of the more fun ones for me.
That's really fascinating. And that evolution is just incredible. So now you put the reporter work, the news work behind in the JD. Tell me what it is that you're doing now and how your book is adding to what you're doing. Your book seems incredible.
Thank you. So I am writing and speaking and connecting on social media. My book, Was It Something I Said, just came out on March 17th. So I just wrapped up a 2.5-week book tour and have more events to come on book signings and book talks. But the back-to-back, one city per night book tour is over for now. And I continue to write. I have a Substack that I write for regularly called the Elevate Etiquette. And then I also write a column for EV Magazine, an Ask Alison column that's answering folks' etiquette questions, sharing more musings on manners. And then I do private coaching and work with groups and individuals in that way as well.
A few decades ago, Martha Stewart was really the etiquette person in many ways, cooking and etiquette and how to set things up, and just kind of gives you that Southern living feel. It sounds like you might be the new person when it comes to giving that elevated experience, right?
Wow. Well, that's a very high compliment because I think of Martha Stewart so highly, and she continues to have such an indelible positive impact on the world with all that she shared regarding etiquette. So I really appreciate you saying that. And if I can continue her mission or continue to advance the work in some way, I'm really grateful to be able to do that.
Now, I hear that you're into home renovations as well. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is true. Yes. So my husband's in real estate, which means that we move practically as many times as a family you'd think of living in the military or working in the military. Every couple of years, we are buying something, renovating it, and enjoying it. And we really like old homes. So the last few homes we've lived in, the last 4 renovations we've done together in DC have been homes that are more than 100 years old.
Oh, wow.
On Capitol Hill or Georgetown, which I use my law degree for that because there's all kinds of rules with, what you can and cannot do with historic properties. but it's been a lot of fun.
Now, do you have a favorite show? I know Chip and Joanna Gaines were big. There were a couple of remodeling shows out in California that I would watch every now and then. So you need your own show, by the way, not only on etiquette, but also on home renovations, it sounds like.
That would be amazing. We'd love to do that.
So do you have a favorite program that gives you inspiration by any chance?
I love Chip and Joanna Gaines. I like their family values and their style, and I think they have a great chemistry on TV together. So they'll always be the gold standard for me.
And Alison, I have a super tough question for you. You lived in some major media markets from the New England area and New York where you work, and now in DC. Do you have any favorite teams?
I will go
professional
Boston.
teams.
Boston or New England all the way. So Patriots, Red Sox, Celtics, and Bruins.
Well, and you have some great markets. You can go to any of those games in any of those markets and you'll have a great experience, right?
True. I will say DC, it's less parochial, if you will.
Sure.
Like most people who live in DC, they are fans of their hometown teams, but then they're also fans of the DC teams.
Right.
So it's not quite as the same as like New York versus Boston.
That's fine. Now, you mentioned something earlier with your family that made me think of mine. Recently, my grandmother passed away. And we spent a lot of time. I remember going with her to meet Muhammad Ali a long time ago, and just a number of other events. But every day when she'd come home from work, it was news time. So no more television and cartoons. And so I would watch the news with her at 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, and I remember it. But it set the stage for my interest of history and in policy and in politics. And it sounds like you were the same way in your home environment.
Yes, and it's something that I really appreciate, especially having just been on my book tour. I was in cities across the country meeting with hundreds of people, and I realized what a gift it was to grow up in a home where business and politics and history and world affairs were discussed at a really young age.
Right. It is amazing. It definitely keeps you connected with your environment, and it gives you a level of understanding that some may not pay attention to. And it gives you this curiosity as well. So it certainly opened my eyes to a lot of different things that are happening around us. And so your book tour, though, how amazing is that? Where have you been, and what is the book tour like? For those people that are looking at writing a book, I speak to a lot of business people that think about it. Either they want to write about their family experience or they want to write about their business. And it sounds like you're able to incorporate a lot of your ideas and values into the book. But what is that experience like for you?
Well, writing a book takes a while if you want to work with a big publishing house. And that's not to say that you have to do it that way, but that's the way that I did it. I published with an imprint of HarperCollins.
Okay.
And in terms of the book tour, I started in Washington, then went to New York. I wanted to be in New York for my publication day. We did billboards in Times Square, started the day. I had a Fox Business live hit in the morning on Stuart Varney's show. And then I was live on ABC News that night on the 6:00 show, had a book signing in the middle of the day. And then it was wheels up every night. So I went from DC to New York to Boston, back to DC, Virginia, Palm Beach, Nashville, more DC and Virginia, Connecticut, Maine, New Hampshire, and then ended with a Fox and Friends segment on Sunday in New York, and then headed back to Washington. But for anybody who's looking to do this, I would say try to identify the markets or the cities that will resonate with your message most. And it reminds me a lot of sort of like a political campaign.
Right.
And what else would I say? I would say momentum. I would say connect with independent bookstores wherever you can, especially if you care about bestsellers lists. Independent bookstore sales are weighted heavily, and it's wonderful to support them and to support the book buying.
Alison, what's neat, you mentioned that the book tour is probably like a political campaign, but I can also imagine it being like walking into the stadium for Friday Night Lights in high school or on a college game day or even in professional, where there's just such an energy that happens when you see, and I've been to a few book tours, there's an energy that happens when you walk out and you see all of these people that really love your work, that there's some value and meaning that they're taking away from your book. Have you had any unique experiences as people come up to you and they share their stories and tell you how you've impacted them?
Definitely. And some of the stories that have touched me most are when people talk about pivots that they've made in their own career.
Right.
And it might be things that I wouldn't necessarily think I inspired that pivot. Like it was a woman who started a hair salon, or a woman who decided to start an animal rescue shelter, and like things that are way outside of my bailiwick, but just having seen, I suppose, some of the pivots that I've made or some of the confidence boosting tips that I've given over the years, that they've helped them. That was really cool to see. And I so appreciated the people who drove long distances to be there or made it into a family occasion. It was really humbling. Or there was a woman, I talked a bit about one of the talks. I was at a junior league event, and which is a women's charitable organization. And I was asked about being the only woman in the room, working in, private practice and those kinds of things. And a woman who has she's been a detective in Washington, D.C. for more than 20 years. And she just started crying.
Wow.
Because she could really relate. And so it's moments like that.
See, that has
really
to be a future book, because those moments and those stories are so impactful. And it would be a book that just highlights your book tour and the people that have come up to you and talk to you about their own life experiences. I find that incredible. Even on the podcast, when we speak to businesses, even off camera and off mic, it's amazing just to hear their actual journey. But that's why we have the program. And one of the things you mentioned, you said someone created a hair salon. There are some wonderful businesses. There are millions of companies, over 30 million companies here in the United States. They're just wonderful businesses. And the vast majority of businesses are small businesses just like that. So to hear their stories on how they started and why they do what they do and the impact they're making in their local communities, incredible. And so great stories that you just mentioned. What's next for you?
Well, I definitely want to write another book.
Okay.
And multiple books. But first, I want to do a good job of sharing this book with the people who will appreciate it most.
Nice.
And I want to continue to do more speaking. And a big focus these past few months has been the book tour. So now that that's over, regrouping a little bit and looking forward to getting back into more of the private coaching and speaking engagements.
So where can the world find your book?
Anywhere books are sold. Go ahead. It's called Was It Something I Said? Everyday Etiquette to Avoid Awkward Moments in Relationships, Work, and Life. And it's anywhere books are sold. And I also have an audiobook that I read myself.
Very nice. So what's neat is I've seen that Barnes & Noble is back to growing again. There are quite a few small local bookstores that I've visited, and they're amazing. It's fun just to walk in the bookstore and you find a nice little table in Texas. There's the Half Price bookstore that is fairly large. Oh yeah, they're fantastic. And the people that are coming in and just spending time hanging out and reading books and playing board games, I love it.
Mm-hmm. And if you're someone who's into business, I think you'll find it fascinating, the process of getting your book into various retailers, or how independent bookstores decide how many books to purchase, and like the whole strategy behind that for anyone who's into business and thinking about being an author. I think that's a fun area to learn about.
Well, I hope that you continue to spread your word and your message on etiquette and your experience and your background as a business leader, because I think more people need to hear your message. And it's incredible just to see your journey. One, you're brilliant, as I mentioned earlier, but your experience is so vast and unique in many ways that I think you offer a lot of perspective that people can utilize.
Thank you. It's so kind of you to say.
So you have to promise me you come back.
Yes.
This has been a delightful conversation.
Sorry.
Yeah, this has been a delightful conversation. You're amazing.
Oh, thank you.
So Alison Cheperdak, the founder of Elevate Etiquette, continue to do great work, and we look forward to speaking with you soon.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on Business Decoded with Ronnie Spellman. We look forward to seeing you next time. Make sure you like, share, and send the podcast to all of your friends.
Stay ahead of the curve. Subscribe right now. We will see you at the next episode.